Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just telling a ghost story, we're going to take it apart, piece by piece. We'll dive into this really chilling Hindi horror tale to figure out how real-world, human cruelty can actually spawn a supernatural terror that's so powerful, it might just stick around forever. So this one question, where is my child? This is everything. It's the engine of the whole haunting. It's what drives the spirit. It's what terrifies an entire village. And honestly, it's the key to understanding all of it. So let's figure out what makes that question so incredibly powerful. All right, so our story kicks off in this village called Belpur. And, it doesn't start with a ghost. It starts with a real, living woman named Anjali. And her life, well, long before she ever became a spirit, it was already a living hell. I mean, from the first week of her marriage, any dream she had of a new life just shattered. She wasn't a daughter-in-law, she was basically a slave. Every single day it was insults, being belittled, always being reminded that the dowry she brought wasn't good enough. It's this tragic and unfortunately all too common story of dowry abuse.
And at the very center of all this suffering was this one idea, vansh, which means lineage or bloodline. See, in a lot of traditional family structures, having a kid, especially a son, isn't just something you hope for. It's your absolute duty. So for her husband's family, the fact that Anjali couldn't conceive, that was seen as her ultimate failure. It was like a betrayal of her entire reason for being there.
So what you end up with are two different Anjalis. On the outside, to everyone else, she was stuck with this awful label Banj, which means barren. And look, that wasn't just a mean word. In the eyes of the village, it made her incomplete. She was an outcast, even a curse on the family. But inside, she held on to this one tiny, desperate hope. If I can just have a baby, maybe that will save me. Okay, so after 5 years of just this relentless torment, the one thing Anjali had been praying for finally happens. But it wasn't her rescue. No, in a twisted way, it just gave her abusers a brand new, even crueler weapon to use against her. Just trying to imagine that for a second. After years of being told you're worthless, a doctor looks at you and confirms your deepest, most desperate wish. For the first time in forever, Anjali felt real joy. She honestly, truly believed that this baby was going to change everything, that her suffering was finally over. But her family's reaction? It was swift and it was brutal. Her mother-in-law's words laid it all out, crystal clear. They didn't want her. They wanted the heir. Anjali was just a container, something to be thrown away once the baby was born. Just like that, her one moment of happiness was completely snatched away. So you'd think things would get better now that she was pregnant, right? Nope. They got worse. The beatings didn't stop. They practically starved her, making her eat stale bread while still doing all the heavy work around the house. The verbal abuse was non-stop. And as she got weaker and weaker, her family did absolutely nothing. No help, no care, not a moment of rest. And then things got really, really critical. A doctor told Anjali straight up, if you don't get proper food and rest, both you and the baby are in serious danger. You'd think that would be a wake-up call, right? But that warning, the very thing that should have saved her, is what ends up triggering the most horrifying part of this whole story. And the thing that set it all off? It was something so small, so petty, cold food. Her father-in-law flips out and throws his plate. Her husband, Rahuvir, he's drunk, and he accuses her of doing it on purpose. And then he just attacks her. He beats her, over and over, while his parents just sit there and watch. The last thing she says is a plea, not for her own life, but for her unborn baby. And then, just silence. The first words anyone says in that silent room, they aren't words of panic or regret. They're words of relief. Good, the trouble is over. Can you believe that? Their only thought wasn't, oh my God, what have we done? It was, okay, how do we hide this? So, to keep the police away and stop the village from gossiping, they denied her even the most basic dignity and death. No proper funeral, no rites, nothing. They just dragged her body out into the backfield and buried her and her unborn child in a shallow grave.
So Raghavir and his parents, they probably went to sleep that night thinking, phew, our problem is literally buried. But what they'd really done was trade a human problem for a supernatural one. The trouble wasn't over. Oh no, it was just getting started.
It was quiet for 3 nights, just 3. It was this eerie, really fragile peace, the calm before the real horror was unleashed.
And her revenge, it was systematic. It started small, with sounds, the cries of a baby that wasn't there. Then, people in the village started seeing a weeping woman under a tree. And pretty soon, her full ghost starts appearing right there in the family's home, holding a child. The terror just ramps up and up until it becomes physical, this suffocating feeling like they can't breathe, can't even scream.
And the irony here is just crushing. The same house where they tortured and killed her, it became their prison. The three of them were so terrified for their lives, they just huddled together in one room, completely trapped by the ghost that they themselves had created.
So this whole campaign of supernatural terror, it's all building towards one final, deadly confrontation. It's a showdown that would, solve the family's problem for good, but it would also cement Anjali's tragic story into the village's history forever.
Then, one morning, the house is silent again. The villagers go in and find Raghavir and his parents dead. And get this, the room was locked from the inside. But even with them gone, the fear didn't just disappear. Anjali's spirit was still there, you could feel it. And the villagers, totally freaked out, knew they needed to call in an expert, a mystic.
And the mystic, he explains the folklore that's at the heart of this whole horror story. He says a spirit like Anjali's, she isn't just stuck here because of revenge. She's bound to this world by a mother's love that never got to be fulfilled. So she's not just out for vengeance, she's searching for her child.
So to try and bring her spirit some peace, the villagers do everything they can to give her what she never had in life. They exhume her body. They find her parents who are finally told the awful truth. They even perform a ritual, placing her favorite doll from when she was a little girl and some chocolates by her grave. And then finally, they give both mother and child the proper funeral they always deserved. But some wounds, they're just too deep to ever really heal. Even after her murderers were dead, even after all the rituals, the legend in Belper says her spirit never found peace. To this day, people say you can feel a chill in the air near those fields, and sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear a whisper on the wind, asking that same heartbreaking question over and over, where is my child? It really leaves you with a chilling final thought, doesn't it? The ghosts we create from our own cruelty, those are the ones that never ever go away.